I'm a 26-year-old woman, and I've been living in the house I inherited from my mom. It's a modest, comfortable place filled with memories. I was really close to my mom, and after she passed away 2 years ago, this house became my sanctuary. It's not just a house, it's a part of my mom's legacy. She left it to me in her will, and I've been living here alone since then. I pay all the bills and handle the upkeep myself, which gives me a sense of independence and pride. About a year ago, my dad started dating a woman he met online. Her name is Anna. At first, I was genuinely happy for him. My dad was lonely after losing my mom, and I thought maybe this was his chance to find happiness again. But things started moving really fast. Within 3 months of dating, Anna moved in with my dad. I didn't think much of it, since it wasn't my place to interfere with his relationship. I just wanted my dad to be happy. It didn't take long for Anna to start showing her true colors. From the very beginning, she was overly involved, making suggestions about how my dad should improve his life. It was little things at first, like changing his wardrobe or suggesting new hobbies for him. But soon, her attention turned towards my home. Anna started dropping hints about redecorating. She would casually mention how the living room could use a new color or how a different sofa would make the space more inviting. I politely ignored her comments at first, but it quickly escalated. One day, she came over with paint samples and swatches of fabric for new curtains. I was taken aback. I hadn't asked for her opinion, and I definitely wasn't planning on changing anything. I tried to be diplomatic, reminding her that this was my house, and I liked it the way it was. Anna just laughed it off, saying she was only trying to help. But it didn't feel like help. It felt invasive, like she was trying to make my space her own. The small arguments started not long after that. It was always about trivial things, whether the coffee table should be moved, why I hadn't replaced the old chair in the corner, or how I should think about modernizing the kitchen. Every time I pushed back, she acted surprised, like she couldn't believe I didn't appreciate her input. And every time my dad took her side, he would shrug it off, saying Anna just wanted what was best for us. It was infuriating. Things started to get weirder when Anna introduced herself to my neighbors as the lady of the house. One of my neighbors mentioned it to me casually, assuming I knew. I was floored. I confronted Anna about it, and she laughed, saying it was just a figure of speech. But it didn't sit right with me. It felt like she was trying to plant a flag, to stake a claim on something that wasn't hers. The breaking point for me was when I caught her snooping in my room. I came home early from work one day and found Anna in my bedroom, going through my dresser drawers. She looked up, startled, and immediately put on her innocent face. She claimed she was just trying to help me organize my things. I didn't buy it for a second. I told her, as calmly as I could, that she had no right to be in my room. She pouted, acting like I'd hurt her feelings, but I didn't care. I was furious. When I told my dad about it later, he just brushed it off. He said Anna was trying to make the house feel more like a home, for all of us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like he couldn't see what was right in front of him. Anna was overstepping her boundaries, and he was letting her get away with it. Then came the day I found my mom's old piano moved to the garage. That piano was one of the few things I had left of her, and I kept it in the living room as a reminder of her. I came home and saw it was gone. I found it shoved into the garage, covered with a tarp. I was livid. Anna acted like it was no big deal, saying it didn't fit with the new look she was planning for the living room. I snapped at her, reminding her that this was my house and that she didn't get to make those decisions. That led to a huge argument. Anna claimed that, since she and my dad were together, the house should be considered theirs. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her in no uncertain terms that the house was legally mine and I was the one who paid the bills and the property taxes. My dad just stood there, looking confused, like he didn't understand what I was saying. It was as if he genuinely believed the house belonged to all of us now. Things escalated even further when Anna suggested that I should move out. She said it would be better for everyone if I gave them space to be a real family. I was stunned. She had only been in our lives for a year, and she was already trying to push me out of my own home. That's when I realized I needed to set some boundaries, fast. I didn't know how far Anna was willing to go, but I had a sinking feeling that this was just the beginning. Update 1. So, I got home from work one day, and right away, something felt off. There was a white van parked outside the house with locksmith services written on the side. At first, I thought one of the neighbors was getting their locks changed. But as I walked up to my front door, I noticed a man fiddling with the lock. My lock. I asked the locksmith what he was doing, and he seemed a bit startled to see me. He said he was here to change the locks, per Anna's request. I was stunned. Why would Anna be asking to change the locks on my house? I told the locksmith to stop immediately, and that he didn't have permission to make any changes. He seemed confused, but he stopped working and stepped back. Just as I was about to call Anna, she came out of the house, acting completely nonchalant. I asked her what was going on, and she gave me this sweet smile, saying she was just trying to make the house safer. According to her, there had been break-ins reported in the neighborhood, and she wanted to be proactive. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I pointed out that it wasn't her call to make, and that she didn't have the right to change the locks without my permission. Anna's smile disappeared, and she switched gears fast. She started getting defensive, saying she was only doing it for our safety and that I was being unreasonable. Right at that moment, my dad pulled into the driveway. He got out of the car, looking confused when he saw the locksmith and us arguing on the porch. He asked what was happening, and before I could get a word in, Anna launched into her version of the story. She was almost crying, saying she was trying to protect us and that I was overreacting for no reason. My dad turned to me, looking upset, like I was the one causing trouble. He started asking why I couldn't just trust Anna's judgment. It was the same pattern I'd seen before. He automatically took her side without even hearing me out. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and explained that this was my house, Legally, only I had the right to make decisions like that, and I hadn't given any permission for the locks to be changed. I could see the moment of hesitation on my dad's face. He looked genuinely surprised, almost like he'd forgotten the house wasn't his. Anna must have noticed too, because she quickly jumped back in, accusing me of being controlling and trying to ruin their relationship. She even went as far as to say I was being ungrateful after everything she'd done to help around the house. I decided it was time to put an end to this nonsense. I went inside, grabbed the property deed from my safe, and brought it outside. I handed it to my dad, pointing out my name on the document as the sole owner. My dad's face fell, and I could see the confusion and realization hitting him all at once. He looked back at Anna, who was trying to avoid eye contact. I told them both, in no uncertain terms, that Anna had no right to make any changes to the house without my explicit consent. This was my home, and I wasn't going to let anyone walk all over me, especially when it came to something so serious. The locksmith, who had been standing there awkwardly the entire time, took this as his cue to leave. He apologized, packed up his tools, and got out of there as quickly as he could. After the locksmith left, Anna's demeanor changed again. She dropped the victim act and got visibly angry. She started yelling, accusing me of being selfish and trying to destroy her relationship with my dad. She said I was making it impossible for them to feel like a real family in the house. It was almost laughable. I reminded her, as calmly as I could, that this wasn't her family home, it was my house, and she needed to respect that. For the first time, my dad didn't immediately jump to her defense. He stood there, looking lost and conflicted. It was like he was seeing the situation clearly for the first time. He didn't say anything, just stared at the ground, while Anna kept ranting about how unfair I was being. Later that evening, my dad came to talk to me. It wasn't much of an apology, more like a mumbled acknowledgement that maybe things had gone too far. He said he didn't realize how serious the situation had become, and that he'd try to talk to Anna about respecting boundaries. It was a weak attempt, but I could tell he was struggling, caught between me and Anna. Just when I thought things were calming down, I overheard a conversation between them later that night. Anna was telling my dad that I might be having some sort of mental health crisis, and that he should consider taking control of the situation before I did something drastic. She was planting seeds of doubt, trying to make it seem like I was the problem, not her. That was the final straw for me. I realized Anna wasn't just overstepping, she was actively trying to manipulate the situation and turn my dad against me. I decided then and there that I needed to consult a lawyer. If she was bold enough to try and change the locks on my house, I had no idea what she might try next. This wasn't going to be just a matter of setting boundaries anymore. I needed to protect myself and the home my mom left me. I wasn't going to let Anna take over my life, no matter how hard she tried. Update 2. After the lock-changing fiasco, I knew I had to take action. Anna wasn't just overstepping, she was treating my house like it was hers. I decided to consult a lawyer to get some clarity on my rights and figure out the next steps. The lawyer was straightforward, since Anna wasn't on the deed, had never paid rent, and contributed nothing financially. She had no legal claim to stay. He advised me to serve her an eviction notice. It felt drastic, but after everything she'd pulled, it was the only way to regain control of my home. The next day, I came home from work with the eviction notice in hand. I could hear laughter from the living room as I walked in. Anna and my dad were sitting on the couch, watching TV like everything was normal. I interrupted them, holding the eviction notice out. Anna's smile dropped immediately, and my dad looked up, confused. I calmly explained that this was an official eviction notice, giving Anna 30 days to leave. Anna's reaction was immediate and explosive. She jumped up from the couch, screaming at me, saying I was trying to destroy their relationship and that I was heartless. She started crying, calling me every name in the book, while my dad just sat there, looking stunned. He finally stood up and tried to calm Anna down, but she was having a full-blown meltdown. She kept saying I was jealous and couldn't stand to see my dad happy. My dad turned to me, his face pleading, asking if I really wanted to go through with this. He said that serving an eviction notice would ruin everything, that it would destroy his relationship with Anna. I stayed firm, though. I reminded him that this was my house, and she had no right to be here after everything she'd done. That's when Anna pulled out her manipulation playbook. She started gaslighting me right in front of my dad, saying I'd promised her she could live here. According to her, I'd said we'd all be a big, happy family, and that she could help make the house feel like a home again. My dad looked even more confused, like he was genuinely considering her words. It hit me then. Anna had been feeding him lies about our future together, making him believe she had a stake in the house. The argument escalated quickly, and it wasn't long before my mom's sister called me. I don't know how, but word traveled fast. She was furious, not at me, but at my dad for allowing this situation to get so out of hand. My aunt has always been my rock, and she immediately offered her support, telling me to stand my ground and not let Anna manipulate the situation. Anna wasn't done yet. After her meltdown, she shifted gears again, threatening legal action. She claimed she had tenant rights and would fight the eviction in court. I could see the fear in my dad's eyes as she made these threats. He looked desperate, like he didn't know who to believe anymore. He begged me to find a compromise, to work something out so we could all live together in peace. It was heartbreaking to see him so defeated, but I knew I couldn't back down. I decided to do some research on tenant laws, just to be sure. After a couple of hours online, I realized that Anna's case was weak. She had never paid rent, contributed to utilities, or even bought groceries. Legally, she was nothing more than a guest, and I had every right to evict her. The next morning, I overheard Anna talking to my dad in the kitchen. She was laying it on thick, telling him that I was punishing him for moving on after my mom's death, that I couldn't handle seeing him with another woman. She was twisting the narrative, making it sound like I was the one with the problem. My dad looked completely torn, like he was being pulled in two different directions. That was it for me. I walked into the kitchen and told my dad he needed to make a choice: support me, his daughter, or continue to let Anna manipulate and control our lives. I could see the pain on his face as he struggled to respond. He broke down crying, something I've only seen a handful of times in my life. He kept apologizing, saying he didn't know how things got this bad and that he felt trapped. Anna stood there, watching us with a smug look on her face, like she knew she was winning. It took everything in me not to snap. Instead, I turned around and walked out of the room. I needed space to think, to breathe. I ended up posting an update on Reddit, asking for advice because, at this point, I genuinely didn't know if I was making the right choice. I was flooded with comments, messages of support, and people sharing similar stories about manipulative partners and toxic family dynamics. The support from strangers gave me the resolve I needed. I knew I wasn't crazy or being unreasonable. Anna had crossed the line too many times, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it anymore. I decided to move forward with the eviction process, no matter how ugly it got. As I went to bed that night, I couldn't help but wonder how we ended up here. Just a year ago, it was just me and my dad, grieving but getting by. Now it felt like a stranger had come into our lives and flipped everything upside down. But one thing was clear, I wasn't going to let her take what was mine. The fight was just beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. Update 3. I knew things were going to get worse, but I didn't expect it to escalate so quickly. Not long after I served Anna the eviction notice, I received a court summons in the mail. It was from Anna, claiming tenant rights. She was trying to fight the eviction by insisting she was a legal tenant in my home. My stomach dropped when I read the court documents. According to Anna, not only was she a tenant, but she was also accusing me of harassment and creating a hostile living environment. I immediately called my lawyer. He reassured me that this kind of case was weak, especially since Anna had never paid rent or contributed financially to the household. Still, the fact that she was willing to take it this far made me realize just how deep her manipulation ran. I was dealing with someone who wasn't going to back down easily. The next time I saw my dad, he was in full panic mode. He begged me to drop the case, saying we could find a way to make this work without going to court. He looked so desperate, like he was caught in the middle of a nightmare. I could see he still didn't understand the full picture. He actually believed Anna when she said this was all a big misunderstanding. He kept insisting that if I just talked to her, we could sort it out. I told him I wasn't backing down. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, this was Anna trying to steal my home from under me. I knew I needed to gather evidence to prove that Anna was never a tenant, just a guest who overstayed her welcome. I pulled up records of every utility bill, grocery receipt, and property tax payment from the last year, all in my name, all paid by me. There wasn't a single financial contribution from Anna. It was as clear-cut as it could get. But Anna wasn't giving up. She started spreading lies to my dad and other family members, claiming she had been paying bills under the table and that I was trying to cover it up. My dad seemed confused, like he didn't know what to believe anymore. Then my cousin called, furious. She had spoken to Anna and now believed I was mistreating a helpless woman. It was absurd, but Anna's tactics were working. She was manipulating everyone around her, painting herself as the victim. Thankfully, my mom's sister stepped in again. She's never trusted Anna, and when she heard what was happening, she called my cousin to set the record straight. My aunt has always been protective of me, especially after my mom passed away. She told everyone who would listen that Anna was lying and that I had every right to evict her. It felt good to have someone in my corner. The day of the court hearing arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. I walked into the courtroom, expecting Anna to look nervous, or at least uncomfortable, but she was sitting there with a smug smile on her face. She even had a lawyer with her, which took me by surprise. The confidence she had made me wonder what kind of lies she was planning to tell. Update 4. Just when I thought things were settling down, I came home from work one evening to find my dad packing his bags. I stood there in the doorway, stunned, watching him shove clothes into a suitcase. I asked what was going on, and without even looking up, he told me he'd decided to move in with Anna, temporarily, he said. But I knew better. This wasn't a temporary decision. It was a choice, and he'd chosen her over me. My dad didn't waste time getting defensive. He started saying that if I had just been more understanding, if I hadn't served the eviction notice or taken things to court, we wouldn't be in this mess. He made it sound like this was all my fault, like I'd forced his hand. He kept talking about how Anna felt unsafe and unwelcome, and how he couldn't just leave her to fend for herself. He was guilt-tripping me hard, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was acting like I was the one tearing our family apart. I was too shocked to say much. I just watched as he zipped up his suitcase and carried it out to the car, where Anna was waiting. She was sitting in the passenger seat with that same smug smile on her face, like she'd won some twisted game. She didn't even try to hide her satisfaction. As they drove away, my phone buzzed. It was a text message from Anna. I always get what I want. The anger I felt in that moment was like nothing I'd ever experienced. The news spread quickly through the family. My cousin called me, saying she'd heard my dad moved out. Half the family was on my side, understanding why I'd evicted Anna in the first place. But the other half thought I'd been too harsh, that I should have let them stay and figured out a compromise. It was exhausting trying to defend my actions over and over again. It felt like I was losing not just my dad, but half of my family too. My aunt, thankfully, stayed in my corner. She invited me over for dinner that weekend. We sat in her kitchen, eating spaghetti and talking about everything that had happened. She told me I wasn't in the wrong, that Anna was manipulating my dad, and that he was too blinded by his need for companionship to see it. She even suggested family therapy, but I knew there was no way my dad would agree to it, not while he was under Anna's influence. I tried reaching out to my dad a few days later. I called him, hoping we could meet up and talk things through, just the two of us. He agreed to meet, but when I showed up at the cafe, Anna was there, sitting beside him like a guard dog. The entire conversation was pointless. Every time I tried to speak, Anna jumped in, twisting my words and making it seem like I was attacking them. My dad barely said a word, he just sat there nodding along to whatever Anna said. It was like he wasn't even there. I left the cafe feeling more alone than ever. That night, I updated my Reddit post. The comments poured in, people telling me I'd done the right thing, that I needed to protect myself from Anna's toxicity. It was comforting to see strangers validating my experience, but it didn't make the situation any easier. My dad was still gone, and he'd chosen Anna over me. Without my dad around, the house felt different. It was quieter, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I realized I had more financial freedom now, I wasn't supporting him and Anna anymore, and I could finally make decisions without anyone interfering. I started planning small renovations I'd wanted to do for years but had put off. It was bittersweet, taking steps forward without him. Then, things took another turn. I found out that Anna had started a smear campaign against me on social media. She was posting about me, making vague comments about how she was being forced out of her home by a controlling, abusive family member. She didn't mention my name, but everyone knew who she was talking about. Friends and even distant relatives reached out, asking if everything was okay, hinting that they'd seen the posts. It was infuriating, but I decided not to engage. The last thing I wanted was a public argument that Anna could twist in her favor. My aunt called me again and suggested something I hadn't considered before, going no contact with my dad for a while. She said it might be the only way to protect my mental health, to give me space to heal and move on from all the drama. It felt drastic, but after everything that had happened, I knew she was right. I made the decision that night. I blocked Anna's number and told my dad I needed time and space, but I couldn't keep fighting this battle. He looked devastated when I told him, like he was losing a piece of himself. In a rare moment alone, he actually apologized. He said he loved me, but he loved Anna too, and he hoped I could accept her one day. I didn't respond. I just hugged him and walked away. I've decided to focus on myself now. I'm planning some renovations for the house, nothing major, just enough to make it feel like mine again. I've also started therapy, trying to work through the grief and betrayal. It's going to take time, but I'm ready to start moving forward. This is my home, my life, and I'm done letting Anna control it. Update 5. After going no contact with my dad for a few weeks, I tried to focus on myself. But the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off about Anna, something I hadn't figured out yet. I shared my suspicions on Reddit, and several users suggested I dig into Anna's past. One comment in particular caught my eye: check relationship forums. Manipulative people like this usually have a pattern. I decided to take their advice and spent a whole weekend doing an internet deep dive. I searched her full name, variations of it, and even some usernames I remembered seeing on her social media accounts. At first, nothing substantial came up, just a few inactive profiles. But then I hit the jackpot. I found a series of posts on an old relationship forum from several years ago. The stories were eerily familiar, posts from different users describing their experiences with a woman who sounded exactly like Anna. They mentioned a woman who moved in fast, became overly controlling, and manipulated her partners into believing they were the problem. One of the posts even talked about her trying to claim tenant rights in a house she never paid for. I couldn't believe what I was reading. The more I dug, the clearer it became. Anna had done this before. She had a pattern of targeting men who owned property or had some kind of financial stability. She'd swoop in, play the perfect partner, and then slowly take control until they were left isolated and doubting themselves. It was like reading a playbook of everything she'd done to my dad. Then, I received a message from a man who claimed to be one of Anna's ex-boyfriends. He had seen my Reddit post and decided to reach out. He warned me that Anna was dangerous and had ruined his life. He said she had done the same thing to him, moved in quickly, manipulated his emotions, and even tried to take legal action against him when he tried to end things. He shared screenshots of their conversations and legal documents as proof. It was all there, black and white. I knew I had to confront my dad with this information, but I wasn't sure it would make a difference. He'd been so under her spell that I wasn't sure he'd believe me, even with evidence. I called my aunt and told her everything I'd found. She didn't hesitate. She said we needed to do this together, and that it was time for the truth to come out. We decided to confront them at a family gathering that weekend. When we arrived, most of the family was already there. Anna was sitting next to my dad, chatting like she didn't have a care in the world. I walked in with my aunt, feeling nervous but ready. I asked everyone to gather around because there was something important I needed to share. I started with the posts I'd found on the relationship forum, reading out loud some of the stories from Anna's past victims. As I spoke, I watched her face. At first, she looked amused, like she thought this was a joke. But then I showed the messages from her ex-boyfriend. I held up the phone for everyone to see the screenshots. That's when her expression changed. Her confident smile disappeared, and she started fidgeting, glancing at my dad as if she was trying to figure out what to say. I didn't stop. I laid out everything I'd found piece by piece, making sure everyone in the room could see the pattern of manipulation and deceit. My dad just sat there, his face pale, looking like he was in shock. He started connecting the dots, and I could see the realization hit him. He looked at Anna, and for the first time, there was doubt in his eyes. Anna knew she was cornered. In a last-ditch effort, she stood up and started yelling, accusing me of trying to sabotage her, saying I was just jealous and couldn't handle my dad being with another woman. But the family wasn't buying it anymore. They had seen enough. One by one, they started to back me up, telling her to leave, saying they didn't want her there anymore. Anna's face twisted with anger. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, screaming that I'd ruined her life and that I'd regret this. The room was silent after she left, everyone just staring at the door she slammed behind her. My dad broke down. He put his head in his hands and started crying, saying he was sorry, over and over again. He admitted that he'd been blind, that he'd ignored all the red flags because he didn't want to be alone. It was heartbreaking to see him like that, but it was also the first real conversation we'd had in months. We sat there for a long time, talking honestly for the first time since this whole nightmare started. We decided to try therapy together. It's going to take time to rebuild our relationship, but for the first time it feels like there's hope. I blocked Anna's number the moment I got home. I didn't want to deal with any more of her drama. A few days later, I got a new message from an unknown number. It was a cryptic threat, clearly from her, saying I hadn't seen the last of her. I didn't respond. I just blocked that number too. I'm done playing her games. But I'm focusing on the future now. I've started making plans for the house, things I'd been putting off for too long. I'm also starting to rebuild my relationship with my dad. It's not going to be easy, but we're taking it one step at a time. I'm just glad it's over, and that the truth finally came out. For anyone reading this, thank you for your support. It's been a roller coaster, but knowing I wasn't alone made all the difference. Here's to moving forward and leaving the past behind.